Amanda St. Hilaire has been a longtime member of our investigative unit with Brian Polson. They have just exposed so many things and you might have not seen as many stories from Amanda because she has been working in our news management team. And about an hour ago, it was made official that Amanda St. Hilaire is the Executive Vice President of News, our news director.
Don't give me a promotion. Vice President of News, Ted.
Vice President of News. Okay.
Yes.
We like to use
But
the term news director. We're also happy for you. We've been without a news director since the fall. You and Sarah Smith have sort of been running the show for us. And tonight, just today, our general manager, Mim Davey, named you as the news director. First of all, let me say congratulations. How are you feeling about it? And why would you want this job?
Thank you, Ted. It still doesn't feel real. So that's going to take some getting used to. But I'm excited. I never would have thought I wanted this job. Actually, coming up in my career, there were many times when I actively said I would never want this job, especially when I was more on the on-air side of things. So this role, this news director role, you're taking that 30,000-foot view. And over the last really few months here, as I've been working closer with the management team and with the people here, that's when I started going, okay, you know what? I think that this job, which, as I said in the meeting when Mim announced it, is a service and is a responsibility, is one that's really worth doing. And I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. And
that was the name picked out of a hat, but not by chance. This was not a raffle. This was something you earned. So you will be my 7th news director here at Fox 6.
Okay.
Now, that's just a testament to how long I've been around and that, no one else wants me and you guys are stuck with me. So my point is we've had a number of news directors, and the first one who hired me was a woman named Jill Geisler, who I know you have got to know over the last few years, who really shaped my attitude toward this town and this city. We used to have a slogan called TV6. We were TV6 when I started, a friend you can count on in Milwaukee. And that's how we approached things. And then it changed over, and now we're, Fox 6 because you matter. But I'm going to ask you, putting you on the spot, the same thing I've asked every news director who has started here. Who are we and what do we mean to this community? And that's your job. You shape that. So tell me, and tell our viewers, more important, who we are and what we mean to this community. What do you want Fox 6, WITI, and now Fox Local to mean to this community? The floor is yours.
Yeah, so I'll quibble a little bit with what you said in that it is my job to guide the vision, but I think it's also a collaborative effort. Sure. And when I say collaborative effort, I don't mean like everything is a vote and it's a democracy, because that's not how organizations work. But I think it's really crucial for anything to be successful in an organization that people have a hand in building the thing. And an identity doesn't come from the top down. So I can help guide us toward the identity, but I don't think it can ever be championed by only one person. I love a friend you can count on because, as Jill explained it to me, sometimes people hear that and they think, oh, that means you're only going to do fluffy news. But no. If you're going to hear bad news, you want to hear it from a friend.
Right.
And that's what that means, where no matter what, you can count on that person. I think at its heart, in the same way this job is a service and responsibility, right? This job of being news director, that is what we are in the community. That at its core, that's what news is. It's a service and it's a responsibility. And it's making sure that the public is informed and engaged, and making sure that we are taking care of the people, of the journalists who are telling those stories. So you've sat in enough editorial meetings, Ted, to know that my number one question is usually, what story impacts our audience the most?
It is the number one question you ask. Yeah.
That is the number one question I ask. And so,
which is a really tough question to answer, right? Because we want to appeal to the farmer in Jefferson County and the mom in Milwaukee and the dad in Ozaukee County and the factory worker in Kenosha. I mean, it's a tall order to get the stories that are of interest and importance to people. And sometimes we don't always have the staff that we want to do it. People calling sick, they're on vacation. So it's the using of the resources. And that's really a challenge for any news director in modern day journalism.
I think so, and a challenge to make sure all the voices are heard, right? Because sometimes when you only have a select group of people at the table, you think you know what people want, and it might be what the people you're in contact with every day want. But to your point, Ted, there are so many other people out there, and that's why when we talk about having diversity in a newsroom, it's diversity across all different things, right? Race, religion, diversity of opinion, and we need that because that's how we accurately reflect the audience we serve. Sorry, you're probably hearing my notifications go off. The true life of a news director already is starting. So I think that that's really key in how we position ourselves. I'm not as worried about what our competition is covering because everyone kind of has their own identity. I think a huge part of what we're doing as we look beyond traditional broadcast and we're looking at streaming and we're looking at digital and we're looking at meeting our audience where they're at instead of asking them to come to us. I think a lot of times it is going to mean we're covering maybe different things than other people because we're looking at different formats. What plays on TikTok and on YouTube, where kind of large portions of a sometimes untapped audience are, it's going to be different than what might play on traditional TV. So part of this is now I know where some of the bodies are buried because I've been here 8 years, but now I'm digging into more, okay, what does that research say? I'm going on a bit of a listening tour in our newsroom, right? What are our own journalists saying? And combining some of that anecdotal evidence with some numbers and some data, I think that's where together as a newsroom, we build, okay, how do we give people not just what we think they want, but what they actually want and what they actually need.
Right. And that's, again, it's a tall order to answer that. And that, I guess that gets me to my penultimate question is what do you ask of viewers? You know, the people are watching less TV news than they used to. Maybe they're getting on their phones, maybe in aggregate they're watching as much. But the days when we sat down as a family and watched the 6 o'clock news isn't necessarily the way I grew up and the way you grew up. It's not necessarily happening now. We get news on our phones, we get news on our tablets. What are you asking of the Fox 6 viewers?
In terms of how they watch or
what they want? What would you want to hear from them? What questions do you want to hear from them? Because these are the people we're serving. They're our customers, our clients. We don't use that term, but any good salesperson is going to go to their client and say, what are your needs? What do you want to hear from them? Because you will start to hear from them. That's your job as news director.
Yeah, and I think sometimes I learned this in my investigative reporting career, how you ask the question can be really crucial. Because as we learned, back through the old rating systems days where people would fill out diaries with what they want, sometimes what you think you do and what you think you want is different than what you actually want, right? It's like when you go to your doctor and you say, oh yeah, I definitely work out 5 days a week and eat all my vegetables and I only have 1 to 2 drinks a week, right? That may or may not be what's actually happening. So it's kind of like when we ask people what they want and they say positive news and then no one clicks on it. So I found, and actually our assistant news director, Sarah Smith, she came and spoke to the class I teach at Marquette University. And in real time, we were almost conducting a focus group of 20 to 22-year-old students. And we were asking them, okay, who do you follow? Do you follow any journalists on social media? And what makes you click on something or stay with something? How long does it take you before you decide to move on? And for a lot of them, if anything even hinted at being super buttoned up traditional news, it was like next, right? And these are journalists, very smart journalism students, but it's not how they consume the news. You know what they loved was Ben Handelman's TikTok, though.
Oh, Ben does
A
a
lot
great
of
job
them,
on TikTok. Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of them knew Ben from TikTok and not from TV, but
Right.
they had seen his stuff, right? So I think that those kinds of questions sometimes, or putting examples in front of people is how you get a more realistic gauge of how they're going to consume it. But I agree with you. Gone are the days of you have to turn on the TV to find out what happened today.
Right.
Like you've already been finding out
Right.
what happened today. So now it has to be more about how do we give you context and meaning in a language that you can translate? How do we show you what's happening right now and be nimble and react to that? Because that is where live TV is at its best, is when we're going where something is happening now. But then we also have a responsibility to explain it and not just jump from one thing to the other, but take people on that journey. So I say this, I'm not trying to dodge any of your questions, but I think there's still a lot that I need to dig into in terms of where that research is and where our audience is before having definitive answers. So, like I said this afternoon, nothing more dangerous than a leader who doesn't know what they don't know.
Right. Well, we'll try to help you find what you need to know as we go along here. Last question. What are you comfortable sharing with the viewers about who you are? I mean, I much like Jill Geisler, who was my first director here, who started on air and then became a news director. You started on air here as one of our investigative reporters from our amazing investigative unit team. Now you're the top manager in the news department. What else are you comfortable sharing? We can tell folks you went to Syracuse University,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Go
Which I
Orange,
understand has an okay to Midland journalism school, or one of the. We're
please.
kidding. It's one of the best in the
Uh-huh.
country. You were well trained. What else are
Carl
you
and I give
comfortable
each
sharing?
other Carl and I give each other flack about that all the time because he
Yeah.
went to Northwestern and
Uh,
Polson went to Mizzou. So between the
yeah.
three of us, there's a battle over the Superior Journalism School.
Well, I will throw my hat in for the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Please
But
do.
anyway, um,
Adam Schrager will be happy.
what are you comfortable sharing with viewers about who you are and where you come from and what, I think much like my life has to become a bit of an open book,
Yeah.
because if you want people to trust you, you got to tell them who you are. So share with me and our viewers, more important, what you're comfortable sharing about who Amanda St. Hilaire is.
Sure. I mean, I think the most encompassing statement is that I'm a pain in the rear end, which is how I became a journalist and actually how I accidentally talked myself into a management gig. So I was born in New Hampshire, spent most of my childhood there. My family moved to Pennsylvania when I was 15, and a lot of my family is on the East Coast. I have five younger brothers. I'm the oldest and the only girl. Big Catholic family, and I went to Syracuse University right out of school, graduated a semester early, and right out of school when I was just 21-year-old baby, started at WTOL 11 in Toledo, which was a much bigger market than I had any business starting out in at that point. But the news director there gave me a chance, which I'll forever be grateful for. And I started, as many people do, as a multimedia journalist or one-man band, one-woman band, where I was running a bureau and shooting and editing and reporting and running my own live hits and all that fun stuff. And then I moved into a morning reporter role, and through that, talked my way into investigative reporting because the way that shift was structured gave me some time when my live hits were over to dig into some stuff. And I fell in love with investigative reporting and long form reporting that way. Took a job in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which was a homecoming for me to go back to, the town where I went to high school. And almost ruined my husband's proposal to me, by the way, because
I
when
don't
we were
know
in
this. I don't know
Toledo,
this story. Go ahead.
yeah, oh my gosh, the poor guy. And he, like, I don't think had ever planned anything in his life up to that point and had planned this proposal. And I was like, Let's just talk about this contract stuff in Harrisburg because I had to make a decision about whether to sign the contract. And I was like, we don't need to go out to dinner. Like, let's just order takeout. And he's like, no, I'd really like to go out to dinner tonight. Can we please just stick with that? And then he ended up proposing, and then a few months later, we moved out to Pennsylvania. And so I went out there as a producer reporter because that was how I had kind of talked my way into that job. I was willing to learn how to produce, which was a great skill. And then I convinced my news director there to let me start an I team. And so started that. Ended up doing some weekend anchoring, starting a podcast.
I team stands for investigative team. Just
yes,
yeah, we're using jargon that we.
Yes, we are. We are. But yeah, started an investigative unit and continued to love that. Came out here when there was an investigative opening, and that was in 2018. That was almost 8 years ago. So did that for 4 years, and then that's when I accidentally talked myself into a management job because I had some thought. Jim Wilson, our former news director, will tell you I had some thoughts and opinions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, about especially this was during COVID times. So I had some thoughts on burnout prevention. This was when the Great Resignation was happening and stations across the country were just experiencing turnover. And so he said, well, now you got a chance to try it. And I ended up liking it a lot more than I thought I would.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I can tell you, well, you already know because you were there. I can tell our viewers that there was a great amount of elation when the announcement was made at about 2:01 this afternoon that Amanda St. Hilaire is our new Vice President of News, our news director. And I don't think I'm going to get 15 minutes with you again for a long time because you're pretty busy. So I'll take it, even though it's on air. And
we do still have a standing meeting, Ted. So that's not off the calendar.
Okay, we do. I hope that Archangel. You mentioned you were Catholic. I'm Catholic, and we both have Archangel Gabriel statues on our desk, who is the patron saint of broadcasters. I hope he's looking out after you and us and all of those, and it's going to be a real honor to work with you and for you, and just congratulations.
Thank you, Ted. Honor to work with you.